Hello, I'm glad you're here. Tonight, I'll tell you a calm, quiet story. It's about cleaning the kitchen. Nothing happened, really, but that's what made it good. Ordinary is okay. I woke up at 7:43 a.m. There was no alarm, just my eyes opening. A faint light came through the curtain. I didn't move. I looked at the ceiling. There was a shadow from the tree outside, I think. It moved gently with the wind, side to side, slow and soft. I listened. It was mostly quiet, but there was always something. The ticking of a hallway clock, the hum of the refrigerator through the wall, maybe a car far away. I shifted under the blanket. My legs were warm. I flexed my toes. It felt nice. The kind of nice you don't notice unless you pay attention. My pillow smelled faintly of detergent. Clean, soft, still holding the shape of my head. I turned my head toward the window. The curtain was closed, but thin. Light came through it in sheets like paper. The sky was probably gray. I like gray. Eventually, I sat up. The blanket slipped off my shoulder. I stretched slowly. A few quiet cracks from my joints. Nothing dramatic, just signs of being awake. I found my slippers. They weren't lined up. Left one was turned halfway. I fixed that, slid my feet in. The inner soles were a little flat, but warm. I stood. The floor was cool under my feet. Not cold, just present. I walked slowly to the kitchen. The hallway was dim. I passed the clock, 7:47. The second hand ticked steadily. In the kitchen, the light was soft. Nothing artificial yet. Just morning. The windows had fogged during the night. The outside looked blue and blurred. There were 2 coffee mugs on the counter. One was mine. The other, I wasn't sure. Probably mine too. A towel was folded next to the sink. It had a faint red stripe on it. It looked like it had been used to dry hands, not dishes. It was dry now. I leaned on the counter, felt the cool surface under my hand, looked around. There were 3 crumbs on the counter, 1 near the edge, 2 closer to the toaster. I brushed them into my palm, tossed them into the sink. I turned on the kettle. It clicked softly. The orange light came on. I waited. While the water heated, I didn't do anything else. Just stood, elbows on the counter. Steam started to build inside the kettle. A small hiss, not loud, just enough to say, "I'm working." I reached for my favorite mug, white with a chipped rim. The chip was small and smooth. I always turned that part away from my lips. I rinsed the mug with warm water, just to feel the heat, then poured in the boiling water. Dropped in a black tea bag. I dipped it 3 times. 1, 2, 3. Then I let it sit. The color spread slowly, clouding, darkening, settling. I sat down at the table. The chair creaked slightly. The tea sat in front of me, untouched, steam rising in a small, quiet spiral. I watched it fade, thought about nothing, just air, warmth. The beginning of a day. When I finally took a sip, it was strong. I let it steep too long, but I didn't mind. It tasted stable. I held the mug in both hands. Let the warmth settle into my fingers. The mug was heavier than I remembered. Maybe the tea was making it feel that way. Maybe not. I stared at the table. A small scratch ran across the surface. I tried to remember how it got there. I couldn't. That felt right somehow. I drank slowly. By the time I finished, the steam was gone. The mug had a faint brown ring inside. I looked up at the kitchen. Still quiet. Still waiting. It didn't feel dirty, but it didn't feel finished either. There was space for attention, and I had time. So I stood up, and I began. I stood in the middle of the kitchen. Turned slowly, just to see. The fridge had a fingerprint on the handle. Faint, smudged. The microwave door had a little splash mark. I wasn't sure what it was. There was a spoon in the sink. still with a little bit of tea at the bottom. I tilted it. The liquid clung to one side, then slid down slowly. I picked up the towel from earlier. It was folded neatly. I unfolded it, looked at the seams. It was fraying at one edge. The red stripe had faded. Still, it was clean. I set it aside. Then I opened the cabinet under the sink. The cleaning supplies were still there. 3 bottles. One for glass. One for counters. Well, I didn't recognize. Yellow label, maybe citrus. I picked the one labeled surface cleaner. The label was peeling slightly at the corner. I pressed the spray trigger once. Nothing. Again. This time a soft mist came out. It smelled like lemon, or something trying to be lemon. I reached for a cloth. Microfiber. Blue. Folded it in half, then again. Tried to spray one more time into the cloth. It was ready. I started at the far left corner of the counter. Sprayed in a gentle zigzag. Wiped in soft, small circles. The cloth slid easily across the surface. It felt good. To press. To move. To see a change. One spot was sticky. I paused there. Pressed a bit harder. The cloth resisted slightly. Then the spot gave up. It was clean. Microwave area. Next, I moved toward the microwave. There were crumbs near the edge. A few sesame seeds. Maybe. I lifted the microwave slightly from one side. Just enough to slide the cloth under. Dust. And a piece of cereal. I wiped behind it. Then sprayed and wiped the front. The buttons had small smudges. Numbers barely worn off. I pressed stop just to hear the beep. Then wiped again. Behind a toaster, I found more crumbs. They hid in the narrow space between appliances. Dark brown, small, flat. I tilted the toaster carefully. Tapped the bottom. A small cascade spilled out onto the counter. I cupped my hand and swept them into my palm. Tossed them into the trash. There was a sound as they fell in, like dry sand hitting fabric. I wiped the space under the toaster. Sticky spot again. Something sugary. Maybe jam? I looked at the cloth. It had a faint pink stain now. I folded it over and kept going. Next, the sink. There was a small ring of tea in the drain. The spoon from earlier was still there. I rinsed it, wiped it dry, placed it in the drying rack, though it was the only item there. I turned on the water. Warm, not hot. Let it run over my fingers. The sound filled the room. Soft, flowing. I added a drop of soap, watched it swirl, tiny bubbles forming in clusters. I ran the sponge around the sink edges, corners, drain rim, then the faucet, cold metal, with a little splash mark I hadn't noticed. When I turned off the water, it sighed. A small hiss as the pressure settled. I dried the sink with a separate towel, one I keep just for that. It looked better now. Not shining, just reset. I stood back again, looked around. There was more to do, but something already felt different. I opened the fridge. The door made a soft pop. Then a quiet hum kicked in, the motor adjusting. The light flickered for half a second, then stayed on. Cool white. Inside, a bottle of milk, almost empty. 2 jars of mustard, different brands, but I wasn't sure why I had both. 1/2 cucumber in a plastic bag. A carton of eggs, with 4 missing. A small glass container with something beige inside. I didn't open it. The shells were glass. Clear mostly, but with smudges and rings here and there. 1 sticky circle under the milk bottle. I lifted the bottle. The bottom had a faint white ring stuck to it. I wiped it off. I removed everything from the top shelf. Placed it on the counter. The glass was colder than I expected. I sprayed the cleaner gently. Wiped carefully. There was a crack near the back corner. Not broken, just a line. I traced it with my finger. It felt smooth. I cleaned the other shelves the same way. One had a leaf from lettuce, dry and flat. I picked it up with the corner of the cloth. dropped in the trash. There was a faint smell inside the fridge. Not bad, just food. When I finished wiping, I stood still for a second, looked at the empty shelves. They looked ready, like the start of something. I put everything back, in the same order, except the mustard. I put both jars side by side, like they belonged together. Door cleanup. The door compartments had their own dust. One packet of soy sauce from months ago. I held it up to the light, still sealed. I wiped the door trays. There were faint rings from old jars. One tiny speck of something red, maybe ketchup. I didn't think about it too hard. When I closed the fridge, it felt quieter. More content. And I felt that too. Next, I turned toward the trash bin. It was metal, pedal operated. The lid had a faint fingerprint, mine probably. I stepped on the pedal. The lid opened with a soft clunk. Inside, a bag half full. Mostly paper. Some crumbs. One eggshell. I pulled the bag out slowly. It resisted a little. Something had stuck to the bottom. I looked inside the bin. Not terrible, but it had a thin layer of something at the bottom. Specks. A dark ring. I brought it to the sink. Rinsed it once. Then again with soap. I used a sponge just for this. Scrubbed the bottom, the sides, the corners. The water turned a little cloudy. I rinsed again, then dried it with the towel I didn't mind sacrificing. It made a soft squeaking sound when I wiped the inside. The metal was clean now. Cold. Blank. I placed a fresh bag inside. Smoothed the edges. Pressed it down into the corners. It looked ready. I returned it to its place by the counter. Stepped on the pedal again. The lid opened smoothly. No sound this time. Then closed. I turned toward the window. The glass was foggy. Not just from a morning. It hadn't been cleaned in a while. There were faint marks on it. Spots where the condensation had dried. Tiny tracks from where a fly had once walked. Maybe. I unlocked the latch. Pushed the window open just a little. A breath of outside air slipped in. It was cold, but not unpleasant. I grabbed a clean cloth and a glass cleaner. Sprayed once, a soft hiss. The liquid streaked down the pane. I wiped slowly in wide, circular motions. The cloth squeaked lightly. A crisp sound. I moved from one corner to the next, bottom to top. I could see the outside better now. A tree across the street. Still green, but some of the leaves were curling at the edges. A parked car, slightly dusty. No people, just morning. I cleaned the inside of the frame. Dusted the corners. There was one dead bug in the sill. Small, curled, still. I swept it into a tissue and threw it away. When I was done, I opened the window fully for a moment. Let the air in. It smelled like metal and rain. Even though it wasn't raining, I stood still and looked out. Not thinking, just seeing. Then I closed the window, latched it, stepped back. The glass looked clearer now, but not perfect. A smudge near the top still lingered. I didn't reach for it. Some things can stay. On a shelf above the counter, I saw the mugs. 4 of them, each one different. The white one with the chipped rim, the one I always use. A blue one with a fading logo from a job I had 5 years ago. A wide, ceramic mug with little flowers painted around the lip. A gift from someone I haven't spoken to in a long time. And a red one I don't remember getting. I held the floral one. It was heavier than the others. The paint had a slight crack in it. It looked like a spider web. Delicate but deep. I thought about that friend. Where they are now. Whether they still use the mug I gave them. Or if they gave it away. I rinsed the floral mug. Set it gently in the drying rack. Let it drip. Then I held the blue one. The logo was almost unreadable now. Letters rubbed away by fingers and dish soap. I ran my thumb across it. Remember the desk I used to sit at. The way the air conditioner clicked in the afternoons. I didn't drink from that mug anymore, but I didn't throw it away either. It stayed. Quietly. I placed it back on the shelf, turned the handle inward, so it looked like part of the background. Then I picked up my usual mug, the white one, the chipped rim smooth now from use. I poured some water in, rinsed it, dried it with the towel, then set it aside. I knew I'd use it again later. There's always one drawer. The drawer. The one where everything ends up. Spoons, napkins, rubber bands, batteries, things that don't belong anywhere else, so they belong there. I opened it slowly. It made a faint wooden creak. Not loud, but honest. Inside, a soft kind of clutter. Not messy, just unorganized. Everything had history, just not priority. Spoons first. 3 big, 2 small. One had a slightly bent handle. I don't remember how. They were resting together, overlapping like quiet conversation. I picked each one up, ran my finger along the edges. Checked for spots. There were none. Still, I wiped them, one by one. A soft cloth folded twice. Circular motions. Polish. Stack. Next, a roll of tape. The end was folded over. Dusted. I smoothed it down. Left it that way. There was a battery in the corner. AA. No label. I didn't know if it still worked. I didn't test it. Just set it aside. Then a napkin. Fabric. Folded small. Soft beige with a blue edge. It had a faint mark, wine, or sauce. I brought it to my nose. No scent. I smoothed it flat. Folded it again. Same as before. Returned it to the drawer, but a little further back. Midsection, there were 2 rubber bands. Tangled. One still stretchy. One cracked slightly when I pulled it. I played with it for a moment. Wrapped it around my fingers. Let go. It snapped softly. There were paper clips too. 3 connected in a small chain. I separated them. Wiped them gently. Placed them in a little plastic lid I found at the back of the drawer. Now it was their container. The drawer itself needed cleaning. I removed everything. Laid it on the counter like pieces of a quiet puzzle. Then wiped the inside. Dust. Salt grains. A bit of dried something. I didn't ask what. I used the corner of the cloth to get into the edges. Folded it over for the sticky spot. When it was clean, it looked blank. Peaceful. A small, personal reset. I put everything back. Not quite organized, but deliberate. The drawer closed with a soft wooden sigh. I didn't plan to turn on the radio, but the silence had stretched long enough. And I wanted something. I pressed the small button on the speaker by the window. It blinked once, then came to life with a soft hum. A station faded in. Not music, talking. 2 voices. Calm. Measured. They were discussing trains. Schedules. Delays. Nothing urgent. One of them laughed quietly. It sounded like someone leaning back in a chair. The volume was low, just enough to feel like something was happening beyond the walls. Like the world hadn't stopped completely. I didn't listen to the words, just the tones, rhythms, pauses. It felt like weather. I moved around the kitchen, letting the sound follow me. Not as distraction, but as company. The voice said something about Platform 3. I pictured a train station. Not one I'd been to, just a vague idea. Gray floor, plastic benches, people with luggage they packed too quickly. Then I forgot the image and kept wiping the lower cabinet doors. The cabinet handles were small, round, cold to the touch. I counted them, one by one. There were 8. Even though most looked clean, I wiped each, just in case. One had a tiny dot of something, coffee. It came off easily. The top right cabinet was harder to reach. I stood on my toes, used just the edge of the cloth. A light layer of dust, barely visible, but it was there. I sprayed lightly, wiped again, watched the surface go from dull to less dull. Behind me, the radio kept talking. Now something about weather. Wind in the northeast. Low pressure. Chance of fog. It matched the window. Gray light. Still trees. Somewhere between morning and afternoon. One of the voices said goodbye. The other thanked him. Then a song started. Just piano. No lyrics. No build. Just notes. Soft. Drifting. I didn't recognize the tune, but it made sense. I didn't turn it off. Just let it play. I heard footsteps in the hallway. Soft, then closer. A pause. Then a knock. Now at my door. Next one over. Muffled voices. A short exchange. Then silence again. I stood still for a moment. Listened. Then another knock. This time mine. Not urgent. Just polite. I opened the door halfway. It was the man from 2 floors up. I'd seen him before. Usually in the stairwell, holding a grocery bag. He was holding an envelope. White. Slightly bent at the corner. Wrong box, he said, smiling a little. It's yours, I think. He handed it over. No name on it, but I took it anyway. Thanks, I said. We stood there a second longer than necessary. Not awkward, just neutral. How's the weather? He asked, glancing toward the fog hallway window. Gray, I said. He nodded. I like gray, he added. I smiled. He stepped back, nodded again, said, all right. I said, see you, though I probably wouldn't. I closed the door. The latch clicked gently. Back in the kitchen, I set the envelope on the table. Didn't open it. I'd check later. The radio was still playing. A woman's voice now, reading news headlines. Calmly, like she was telling a story from memory. I went back to cleaning, but slower now. The room felt slightly different. Not because of the envelope, not because of the neighbor, just because of the air, like something had passed through and left a shape. I let the moment sit, didn't push it away, didn't hold it, then picked up the cloth again. There's a corner of the counter where the laminate is starting to peel. Just a little. A small curve at the edge. It catches light in a strange way. I run my finger over it every time I walk past. I've thought about gluing it back or replacing the whole strip, but I never do. It's not urgent. It's not broken. Just not new anymore. Above the stove, one tile has a small crack. Barely noticeable, but I know it's there. I've looked at it a dozen times. Told myself I'd regrout it or cover it with a magnet, but I never follow through. The cabinets could use repainting. The wood's fine, but the paint is chipped at the corners. Little crescents of bare wood showing through. I once looked up how much paint costs. Took a screenshot. Never opened it again. Same with the faucet. It drips sometimes. Not every day. Just enough to remind me. I tried to fix it once. Watched a video. Tightened something underneath. It worked. For a while. Then it started again. Now I just keep a towel folded near the sink. To catch it, I tell myself I'll get to it. When I have time. When I have energy. When I feel like fixing things. But that never really comes. And the kitchen works just fine. It makes tea. Holds light. Wears silence well. So for now, everything stays. Not perfect, but familiar. I spray one more spot on the edge of the counter. The cloth glides easily. The light hits the surface. A faint dullness becomes soft shine. The radio talks about books now. An interview, maybe. I hear the words childhood and cardboard boxes. Then nothing I retain. I think, for a moment, about painting the walls a different color. Something light. Maybe sage green. But I know I won't. Not this month. Maybe not this year. And that feels fine. Some places aren't meant to be new. They're meant to be stayed in. And noticed. I haven't spoken to anyone today. Except the neighbor. And that was maybe 20 seconds. I haven't received a message. No call. No notifications that needed me. There are people I could reach out to. Friends, somewhere. Family. But I haven't. Not because I'm hiding, not because I'm waiting, just because I don't need to right now. I move through the kitchen alone. The chair still stands where I left it. The mug waits. The cloth rests folded by the sink. Nothing asks anything of me. It's quiet, but not silent. There's the sound of the fridge motor rising and falling, the occasional tick from the hallway clock, the low hum of the radio, and the faint creak of my floorboards. I fill the space without filling it. I breathe. I wipe surfaces. I drink tea. I listen. No one sees it. No one comments. But it still happens. I live here, and it's enough. I sit down at the kitchen table. The radio has gone back to piano music. Same station. Same calm. I look around. The light has changed a little. Less blue now. More white. Later in the day, but not quite afternoon. Everything feels still. I think about the word alone. It doesn't bother me. It's not heavy. It just means I'm here, and no one else is. That's all. Some people search for quiet. Some run from it. Me, I let it settle, like dust on the windowsill, like steam in the air. I pour one more cup of tea. This time mint. I don't time it. I don't stir it. Just let it steep. It tastes like memory. Cool green. A little bitter. A little sweet. I sip it slowly. Look around again. Nothing left to clean. Nothing left to fix. Just a quiet kitchen. And me. I hadn't touched the floor yet. Everything else was clean. Still. Settled. But the floor needed its turn. So I reached for the broom. Soft bristled. Lightweight. I held it for a second. Looked at the shape of the handle. The worn grip. A slight bend near the middle. It had been used before, many times. I started at the far corner, near the radiator, where crumbs always seemed to gather. Little bits of toast, maybe flakes of something I couldn't name. The broom moved gently. It made a dry brushing sound, like wind through grass. I guided it slowly across the tiles, toward the center, then across the other side. Near the fridge, I found a cherry stem. Small, curved, brown now. I swept it into the path, let join the rest. There was also a torn piece of paper, part of a receipt, I think. It had no words left on it, just a barcode and a line. I didn't read it, just moved it along. Under the table, there was more. 1 grain of rice. A hair, not mine, maybe, but here anyway. 2 breadcrumbs. I moved the chairs slightly. They creaked on the floor, like old friends shifting in sleep. I swept everything into one small pile. At the edge of the room, near the trash bin, I bent down, used the dustpan, gathered the pieces, lifted them carefully, like holding something delicate even though I wasn't. I emptied the dustpan into the bin, pressed the bag down with one hand, just a little. Then I set the broom back where it belonged, behind the fridge, leaning slightly, balanced. I looked at the floor again. It wasn't perfect, not spotless, but looked lived in, cared for. The light from the window made a rectangle across the tiles. I watched a speck of dust float in that light. It moved slowly, then disappeared. I wasn't looking for anything, but my eyes still moved, still scanned. By the baseboard, I noticed a small chip in the paint, barewood underneath, just the size of a fingernail. I'd never seen it before, or maybe I had and forgot. I didn't touch it, didn't reach for paint, just looked at it, then let it go. On the radiator, there was a small sticker, half peeled off. I think it used to say something. Now just faded blue lines. I pressed the corner down gently. It didn't stick. I let it curl back up. Near the door frame, something shiny caught my eye. A button. Small. Cream-colored. With 4 holes. Still intact. I bent down and picked it up. It was cold. And smooth. I didn't know where it came from. I turned it between my fingers. Then set on the table. Maybe I'd use it one day. Maybe I wouldn't. Behind the sink pipe, just where the wall meets tile, there was a faint brown mark. I don't know what it was. I'd wiped it before. It never fully went away. I sprayed a little cleaner on it. Wiped softly. It faded, but stayed. Some things just do that. I didn't mind. I looked at the faucet again. A single drop hung from the tip. It trembled, then fell. I listened. It made a soft sound, like a fingertip tapping cloth. That was all. I leaned on the counter again. Same place as this morning. Elbows down, hands relaxed. From this angle, the whole kitchen looked calm. Not new, not perfect, but aligned. The clock ticked once, then once more, and still nothing needed doing. I wasn't hungry, not yet, but my mind started to wander toward food. I opened the fridge, just to look, not to take anything. The light came on. The shelves were still clean. That made me pause for a moment. There was a carton of eggs, some leftover rice, a half zucchini in a plastic wrap, a jar of pickles I'd forgotten about. Still good, still waiting. I closed the door slowly. The seal made a soft whoosh. I thought about making pasta. Simple. Boil water, olive oil, salt. Then I thought about doing nothing. Maybe just toast, or cereal, or nothing at all. I sat at the table again, looked at the mug I used earlier. Still there, still faintly warm. I thought about soups I used to make. Carrot and ginger, lentil and lemon, tomato and something. I remembered chopping onions. Not the smell, the sound. That rhythmic, damp sound. Knife to board. I didn't think about food anymore. The radio voice mentioned something about a recipe. I didn't catch it. Something with rosemary. Maybe. I opened the drawer again. Saw a box of matches. A napkin. A soy sauce packet. I closed it again. I stood, walked to the window, and looked out. The sky had softened. That end of daylight. More gold than gray. I didn't decide on dinner. And that was okay. It wasn't time yet. The light in the kitchen was changing. It was softer now, thicker, like it had weight. The corners of the room started to fade, edges less sharp, colors quieter. I didn't turn on the lights yet. I liked this in between. Not day, not night, just now. I walked slowly to the sink, ran a little water, just enough to rinse my hands. Warm, brief. I dried them on the towel near the stove, then folded the towel again. Carefully, more carefully than needed. I looked at the table. The mug was still there, empty now. I picked it up, rinsed it, and placed it in the rack. The radio played a song I didn't recognize. No lyrics, just a few low notes, like something from a dream that doesn't stay with you. I walked to the window one last time. Looked outside. No people, no cars, just a tree moving slightly in the breeze. I turned off the radio. The room got quieter. Not silent, just more mine. I switched off the kitchen light. The click echoed softly. I walked to the hallway. Stopped once. Looked back. Everything was still. Not perfect, not finished, but still. I left the room, closed the door gently. And the day ended with that sound. The bathroom was dim. I didn't turn on the overhead light, just the small one above the mirror. Soft, yellow, enough. I turned on the water, let it run for a while. It clanked through the pipes at first, then smoothed into a steady stream. I stepped in slowly, one foot then the other. The tiles were warm from the steam. The air grew quiet. I stood still, let the water hit the back of my neck, trickle down, over shoulders, down my arms, over the spine. I didn't wash right away, just stood. The water had its own rhythm, its own voice, like distant rain on a window you're not looking at. I closed my eyes. I ran my fingers through my hair, felt warmth. Wait, then used soap. No scent, just foam. My hands moved without thinking. Rinse, lather, rinse again. I leaned forward, letting water run over my back. Then stood again. One drop rolled along my collarbone. I watched it fall. There was no rush, no intention, just motion. I stayed a few more minutes. Let everything slow down. Then I turned the water off. It sighed as it stopped, and the room was quiet again. I stepped out, wrapped myself in a towel. It was soft, warm from the radiator nearby. Steam fogged the mirror. I didn't wipe it. There was nothing I needed to see. The sheets were cool. That first touch, back against cotton, it always felt the same, and always a little surprising. I didn't pull the blanket up right away. Just lay there, still damp hair against the pillow, feet slightly apart, arms at my sides. The room was dark, but not black. A faint glow from the street light outside. It cast soft shapes onto the wall, blurry, barely moving. The silence wasn't complete. I could hear the soft hum of a neighbor's TV, far away, like a sound underwater. I let my eyes stay open. The ceiling was familiar. I traced lines in the plaster with my gaze, followed them nowhere. I flexed my toes under the blanket, stretched, then let go. The mattress gave under my weight. Not much, just enough. I shifted slightly, found the spot I always end up in, the one the pillow already knows. My breath slowed, not by force, it just did. Inhale, pause, exhale, stillness. The thoughts didn't come in words, more like driftwood, light, aimless. One memory of a train window, one about a dog I saw last week, one about a drawer, or maybe not. They passed through like fog. No shape, no weight, no need to hold on. I turned on my side, closed my eyes, not to sleep, just to rest. I listened to my own breath. Nothing else. That was enough. I don't remember what I was thinking. Something about the light under the door, or the way the blanket folded near my feet. Maybe it was about the chipped cup, or the music from earlier. But even that was already fading. My eyes were closed, but I still saw things. Soft shapes, colors that didn't have names. I shifted once more. A small movement, just to feel the fabric shift around me. I wasn't counting breaths, but I noticed them. They got longer, lighter, further apart. Time didn't pass. It just softened, like a page that turns without sound. A thought floated up, then dissolved. Another came. It didn't stay. There was no story anymore. No kitchen, no radio, no spoons or towels or cherry stems. Just weight, and no weight. Just the body, and something slower than body. I didn't wait for sleep. I just let go of the room, of the ceiling, of the day, and drifted quietly, completely away.